Cool. All right. Hi, everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulties again. They gave us a new mic, so all right, that should be fine. Cool. All right. So hello, everyone, and welcome to the second Art as Resistance Artist Conversation of the Justice, Reentry, and Healthcare Virtual Summit. On behalf of the Institute for Community Justice, I'd like to thank PhillyCam and the rest of our sponsors for making this possible. So, almost any successful movement to change the world has been associated in some way with art and personal expression. We can't imagine how the world ought to change without being rooted in the experiences of the people most affected by the elements that need to be changed. And we can't accurately reflect on where we are as a society without seeing and feeling the memories and dreams of people who might otherwise be marginalized from having an impact on the world. These are vital roles that art provides for movements of change, and why art is not only relevant, but essential to the work of ending mass incarceration and seeking justice and reentry. Today, we have some artists whose communities have been impacted by mass incarceration, and a representative from an organization that works with people who have been impacted. First, each of our organizations and artists will have about 5 minutes to talk about their work or their organization. And then we'll have a conversation about the work and the artist process and community involvement. During this conversation, we'll take questions from the audience. So I'd first like to introduce Alexis Rogers. Alexis Rogers is an illustrator and painter living in Willingboro, New Jersey. She makes Afrocentric art that analyzes the beauty, the struggle, and everything in between that makes up the Black experience in America. As a young woman of color and exceptionally talented artist, elevating Ms. Rogers' perspective is absolutely essential for imagining and building a better future, and we're honored to have her here today. Alexis?
Hello, thank you so much for the introduction. As he said, I do make art about the Black experience in America, and I obviously draw from current events and what's going on right now. And I wanted to speak about what inspires my artwork, especially the pieces that you'll see today. So what inspired that work is obviously the summer of 2020. This one was particularly stressful for everybody, but especially for Black Americans across the country. We saw so many protests and riots as a result of egregious injustices that were happening in our country. We watched constant Black death of Black superheroes such as John Lewis and Chadwick, and then we watched the pandemic and how it's disproportionately affecting Black Americans and killing us. And this is no accident at all. It speaks to the underlying conditions of racism and discrimination that are present in our country that have been present since 1619 when that first ship arrived. I wanted to speak briefly about the two pieces. The first piece, entitled Ghosts of the Past, is the one with the man when his hands are caressing his face and you can see the different veins and kind of the chains and different, I guess I would call it the evolution of chains that are a bit transparent, but you can see around him. I wanted to create that piece as an analysis as to why Black Americans are dying at a disproportionate rate from the coronavirus. From the legacy of slavery to Jim Crow era to redlining to mass incarceration, these are all just a few of many reasons why Black Americans are dying from this virus. And I wanted to call them ghosts of the past because they're not, some of them aren't present, yet they are. You can feel them here, and they've evolved in many different ways, and they affect everything. And they're just embedded in our system, which is why so many of us are dying from this virus. And it contributes to underlying health conditions in Black Americans. It contributes to inadequate access to healthcare. It contributes to medical racism and so much more. From chains to a noose to handcuffs, racism has never vanished, but it's evolved. And in my second piece, Who Protects the Youth, it's meant to speak to the effects on the mental health of Black youth in today's society, especially in light of recent events. We are a very technical society, so we're very plugged in and tuned in onto these small supercomputers we have at the tips of our fingertips. And there's so many videos of Black people dying, and it's just become so normalized. And I know many people have become desensitized, and young Black people are online and constantly watching themselves die at the hands of people who literally it's their job. It's supposed to be their job to protect and serve everybody. Um, During an age of technology, videos of Black death add to the daily trauma that Black youth have to endure. And it's not a new concept to watch Black death. You know, Emmett Till, he had an open casket funeral so people could see what these systems of racism were doing to him. And then I see evolve all the way to George Floyd, where you watch the life leave his body. These videos and violent images just circulate around social media, and we, as young people, have to deal with that. Um, and it leads to the desensitization of non-Black consumers, yet detract from the well-being of Black people. And I wanted my piece to raise the question of how can we protect youth if we're constantly watching. Um, that's what I have to say about my artwork, those two pieces.
Thanks so much. That was really just really well said and really powerfully said. So thank you for sharing. And so we have the pieces on our website, and we'll also sort of be showing the slideshow of the pieces. You can sort of see it in one of the boxes there. Next, I'd like to introduce Connie Greer. Connie Greer is the founder of the Respect Alliance, a nonprofit established in 2011 with a focus on effective mentoring, parental engagement at home and school, and social justice issues. The Respect Alliance has for the last 8 years served directly in correctional facilities and on organizational boards for youth and adults in the areas of education, empowerment, and redemption. Ms. Grier advocates for justice and educates society on the realities of the criminal justice system, the school-to-prison pipeline, and reentry. And so she actually submitted for the gallery a children's book that she can sort of speak on a little bit.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I would like to spend a few moments speaking about Khadijah the Rebel, which is the name of the children's book that I offered for the summit. Khadijah is a young lady who is precocious. She asks a lot of questions, and she rarely accepts no for an answer. Khadijah has a best friend whose mother is incarcerated. If you are aware of anything regarding the criminal justice system, you are aware of the separation of families at the hands of incarceration. Mothers and fathers are incarcerated, which means that they are taken away from their children. Khadijah's friend is upset because she's afraid that she won't be able to make the visit to see her mother. Khadijah gets upset. She doesn't understand why her friend should be separated from her mother. And so the story evolves around Khadijah supporting her friend in obtaining the justice and equity that comes from family. Khadijah provides her schoolmates, her classmates, with a way to demonstrate their frustration on behalf of their friend rather, and to utilize a protest tool in order to make change. So that is the essence of the book. The artwork is authentic Nigerian artwork. I connected with a great artist who heard the vision for the book and really went to work. We wanted it to be a coloring book so that it could be accessible to a range of ages. So if you see the sketches, the pictures in the book, you'll see that they're not filled in because we wanted to allow young people the ability to color the story the way that they felt it should be colored. This scene right here is Khadijah having a conversation with her father because she's upset about her friend not having access to her mother. This scene here is Khadijah talking to her classmates at Show and Tell about protests, about how she's upset that her friend can't see her mother and how they need to band together and do something about it. So those are two of the pictures from the story.
That's great. Thank you, Connie. I'm really so we weren't able to share the entire book on our website. I sort of got like a PDF of the whole book, but I'm sure sort of in the conversation that follows, if you could let people know like how they can access that book, or if it's sort of available for sale somewhere, because it's a really powerful story that, you know, I encourage folks to look into. So finally, I'd like to introduce Courtney Bulls. Ms. Bulls is with the People's Paper Co-op, a women-led, women-focused, women-powered art and advocacy project at the Village of Arts and Humanities in North Philadelphia. The People's Paper Co-op looks to women in reentry as the leading criminal justice experts our society needs to hear from, and uses art to amplify their stories, dreams, and visions for a more just and free world. So, Courtney.
Thanks, Marlon, for that. And hi, Alexis and Connie. It's awesome to be on this panel with you all. And I'm honored to be here today representing the People's Paper Co-op. There are a lot of incredible women who are way cooler than I am, but nobody else could be here. So the artwork that is part of the Resistance Gallery this year is part of our ongoing collaboration. Twice a year, the People's Paper Co-op hosts a fellowship for women that are coming home from prison or jail. We typically meet for 10 to 12 weeks. It's a paid fellowship. It is the furthest thing from a social service space you can imagine. Days will look like, you know, anything from doing yoga to learning about healthy food to making each other cry and laugh incessantly. And mainly it's a space for building trust, building support, and looking to women with lived experience as the experts that our city needs to hear from to change policy. So for the last 3 springs, we've partnered with the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund. Women in our program create artwork, poetry, they design their own photographs, and we've then sent that artwork to artists across North America. We're all really good at things. Doing stuff like painting is not one of them, right? So in our program, being an artist isn't, you don't have to be a talented artist to utilize art to express yourself. So we look to the women in our program as the experts to create messaging, and then we look to amazing artists across the country to help visualize their words and poetry. So we send all of these poems, all of these photos to the artists, and they came up with a rough sketch, and then communicated with the women in our program, made sure that they were on the right track, right? So the image that's showing now is a local artist, Kal Yangi, who's really awesome, and these are, the words are from poems that women in our program wrote. And Ka submitted a sketch, and the women were like, well, we don't really like that color, can you change it? So it's a collaborative process. A limited edition of 10 of these. So there are, sorry y'all, this is just how I talk. The artwork was then sold. So 10 artists created beautiful imagery, and we used the artwork to raise money for the bail fund. So in less than 2 weeks, the artwork was sold across, just on a digital platform. We sent out digital posters to people, and we raised $44,000. After the uprising began, an additional $17,000 was raised in 3 days. All of that money went to bail out people who'd been arrested during the protests, and the previous money went to bail out moms to be home with their families for Mother's Day, where they belong. So this is an instance of literally using art to free people, which is, you know, something that art talks about all the time. But the women in our program were able to use the art that they created to support an incredible cause and utilize their experience to make a dramatic change in the lives of people and bring an awareness to why cash bail needs to end. That was terrible,
Cool.
but
No, that was
hopefully you got the gist.
no, that was wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I got a little emotional because I was actually sort of involved with some of the like support for people who were protesting, and so I didn't know that you all had raised so much to help out with the bail fund, and so that's just truly amazing. I mean, you know, sort of speaks to the role of art, and actually speaks to like the sort of opening question that I was going to sort of provide, which was what role do you feel that your work or the work of artists that you work with or the community work that you do plays in this movement for Black lives that we've seen emerge forcefully across the country in this past year to reform or revamp the role of the police and justice system and end mass incarceration? I don't know if any of y'all can speak to that or even discuss. So
Connie, I think you're on mute.
There you go.
I
can hear you now.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. I think that my work has a dual purpose. As a lifelong educator, I feel that the work has the opportunity to educate not only young people, but the adult people who love young people on some of the circumstances around incarceration, the circumstances around the injustice of the separation of families. But a second purpose of my work is to uplift and recognize the power of youth. Oftentimes, adults feel that if a young person has an idea, if a young person has an issue and wants to protest, they should be overlooked. Oftentimes, young people often occupy a marginalized space, much like many of the marginalized groups that suffer from incarceration. And so I feel that the work is an opportunity for young people to see that you're never too young to have an opinion or to make a difference.
Thanks, Connie. That was really, really well said. Well, speaking as the for the like resident youth on the panel, Alexis, I don't know, is that sort of something that you see as like, how do you see the role of your art and your work kind of engaging with the work, like the movement and things that are going on right now?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? My Wi-Fi really just kicked me out. May you please repeat that?
Oh yeah, sure. No, so just Connie was kind of speaking to, you know, how in like sort of her work was trying to elevate the voices of young people, and sort of the point being that young people out in the streets protesting, like, you know, it's their future that they're trying to imagine and envision and work toward. I don't know, you can probably speak a little more to that, Connie, but sort of, I guess I was asking you as sort of a young person creating art, how do you feel sort of your art, I guess, engages with sort of the protests and the movements for change that are happening in the world today?
I would say that as a young artist, I would say that my art is giving me platforms to speak on social issues. Had I not created any art, I wouldn't be here right now speaking about it. And I've had also other opportunities to speak about what's going on. And I also believe it just gives people an outlet. It gives myself an outlet and also others to process what's going on and to talk about it.
Mm.
I'm not doing any huge projects like these two wonderful people here are doing right now because I'm a little younger. But I am having these casual discussions with people over artwork because not everyone always knows how to speak about race, how to speak about social injustice, but people know how to look at art, and art is up for interpretation, and art always leads to discussion, and discussion is how you make change. Um, so that's how I would say that my art contributes to the greater idea of working towards change.
That's awesome. That's a really great. Oh, did you want to speak to that, someone or?
Yeah, I was just gonna
Alexis,
say, like,
that was,
oh, sorry, Connie.
go ahead. Go ahead.
We can take turns. I was just gonna say to your point, art is an incredible tool, and it often allows us to trespass into spaces that don't always want to have conversations about the ramifications of the criminal justice system. And so I feel like, in this country, there are over 70 million people with criminal records. It's more than the entire population of France. Bringing attention to the injustices associated with that, associated with race, associated with the innumerable types of discrimination that people are faced with, being able to use art as that tool to amplify voices that have been systematically silenced and to trespass into those spaces is really important. And I appreciate how you said that much better than I did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Alexis, you say that you're not doing great things like these two other ladies because you're younger, but you are doing great things because art is a therapeutic way to allow people to process their feelings around injustices, but also a way to spark action.
Mhm.
So you creating the art that could have sparked the mind to make change is amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely want to echo that. I mean, people change their minds over like a period of a long time, and I'm sort of like in kind of somewhat organizing work. It takes people hearing the same message in small ways from a lot of different places to sort of change
Right.
their mind fundamentally. And so, that's kind of the role that any one person can play, is just to speak to their friends, speak to their family, people who they already trust, who kind of trust them just on their experiences, on their observations. And movements are comprised of like lots of little disparate sources building into a large thing. And so, definitely want to sort of emphasize what Connie and what Courtney are saying there. So we have one question actually, and I knew this was going to be a question, but Connie, where can we get your book? Yeah.
So, oh, thank you. The book is available online at Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. However, if you visit my website, www.therespectalliance.org, you can also purchase from there. I say that because purchasing directly from me gives me a larger amount to contribute to the Community Bail Fund. I forgot to mention when I spoke about the book that I have a partnership with the Community Bail Fund. So a portion of the proceeds are donated to the Community Bail Fund as well. Not to the tune of as much as Courtney and the co-op has managed to raise, but just the little bit that I can do.
Cool. Thanks so much. I actually have a question for Courtney. So yesterday we spoke with the Prison Arts Collective in San Diego, and they shared some like moving words about how many of the people that they work with prior to sort of engaging with them hadn't necessarily thought of art making as sort of a thing that could be meaningful or like important in their lives. And then after sort of doing the collaborative work with them, kind of became sort of empowered in that way to be able to like speak their truth a little and speak and express their truth a little bit more. Um, can you speak to the impact that you've seen? I don't want you to feel like you have to speak for the artists who you work with, but can you sort of speak to the impact that maybe you've seen for people and their collaboration with the work that they do with People's Paper Co-op?
Yeah, of course. And so oftentimes people come to the program not coming from a bad messenger, unfortunately. So people come to the program thinking that they're just going to color, that it's similar to other programs they've been a part of. And so when they realize day one that we're going to design photographs and create images that are then going to be turned into giant banners to be paraded down Broad Street or to be included in a report to the city about why there need to be more programs specifically for women, then they realize that, well, this is very different. So also, people are often asked in any program about their story. It's a very extractive process and can be re-traumatizing to people. And so people have come to the program expecting that to be the case. And we never want to do that to people. We never ask people their story. If people choose to share, that's very different. But I think creating a space where people can, are encouraged to not apologize, but demand what they need, has been extremely empowering to folks in the program. And as a result, people don't, as I was saying earlier, people don't have to consider themselves artists prior to being in the program, but it's structured in such a way that, if you're not a poet, we have worksheets that everybody fills out and combine them to create collaborative poems. And the resulting poem is something that none of us could have written on our own, but collectively it turns into something extremely powerful and beautiful. And we've been really privileged and grateful that everyone in the program has had solid experiences and been really proud of their work to see it in the innumerable ways it shows up. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. No, yeah, that was a great answer to the question. It's just, it is really interesting how we don't really have this sort of like notion of like what art is and what art can be for people, like especially like, I don't know, especially growing up sort of struggling in some way. Art and the arts are almost seen as like, oh, you want to do that, like that's not going to make money, that's not going to whatever, that's not going to positively improve your life. And so being able to engage with art in a way people see, oh shoot, like this is really important and really impactful and meaningful.
And one of the things, I'm sorry to interrupt you, one of the things that like is an integral component to our artwork is, so those images that you saw, women in our program are exposed to a lot of different things, and one of them, we often try to help people get their criminal records expunged. And so we're called the People's Paper Co-op because we make paper, and the images are printed on paper that the women made out of their torn up criminal records, right? So the whole images are imbued with just taking something negative and transforming it into something powerful, and then including your powerful image on top of it. So I forgot that pretty integral part part of the work.
Cool. Yeah, that's definitely super meaningful, you know, transforming a negative experience into something positive and like forward moving in your life is just so important in like, you know, getting through, being able to engage with and move through and move past trauma. Um, so Connie, I have a question about so the book that you wrote, the Khadijah the Rebel. It's really impactful, largely because of this like positively portrayed strong young girl, sort of dealing with issues that are like very common, but also uncommonly represented. Which, you know, having a family member who's incarcerated, but describing it in this sort of positive, uplifting sort of way, you know, in terms of this character. And so, can you speak to maybe your inspiration for creating the character of Khadijah and writing the story? I think you're on mute.
Inspiration for Khadijah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. I have both a personal and a purposeful inspiration for Khadijah. Had I had a young lady, had I had a girl child, her name would have been Khadijah. Unfortunately, but fortunately, I am the mother of twin boys. So Khadijah's name has resonated in my head for over 20 years. When I wrote the character Khadijah, it was after 20 plus years of working with young girls as a mentor and a teacher, and understanding that young ladies are often, as I said earlier, marginalized. Their opinions are often discounted. They're often sought as a second opinion as opposed to the first opinion of young males. And so building the character of Khadijah came out of the inspiration of the Prophet Muhammad's wife, Khadijah, who was an entrepreneur who financially supported the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, while he pursued his religious studies. So she was a strong, purposeful, powerful woman. So creating the character and giving her Khadijah's name was both purposeful and personal for me. And Khadijah's character, again, has just come out of my life's work with young ladies and wanting society to see that young ladies are powerful, are strong, have strong opinions, and have the capacity to act positively on those opinions.
Cool. That's no, that's really well said. Thank you. Let's see. Just looking through some of the questions here. I don't know. Did any of you have any like questions for each other, or any like, you know, comments that you might want to make on some of the work that y'all have been doing?
I just wanted to express appreciation for each of the projects. Miss Connie, the book, like it's the idea of like such a young, powerful woman is just really important, especially for young girls today. Like, I remember growing up and we're starting to see more representation, more positive representation. Like, I remember the first time I saw myself um, represented in a truly positive light was like Princess and the Frog and Princess Tiana. And now young girls are going to read your story and see, like, especially like young women of color, they're going to see this other young girl of color, and they're going to be like, I can use my voice like that. I have the capacity of change, like to change things on a large scale. And I think that's really important. And Miss Courtney, when you said that they take their old criminal records and they use that and they turn it into paper to create this beautiful artwork, my mind just exploded because that's amazing. That's so amazing. And it's just, I really appreciate how your project is giving women like their right, one, to choose and to take control of their life and to make something beautiful out of a painful experience. I think that's so revolutionary and so transformative, and just I really appreciate being able to speak with you both about your projects. It's just truly amazing. So thank you for all that you're doing and just paving the way for young women to come up and like being such amazing role models because these projects are just mind blowing. Thank you.
Alexis, that means so much. Thank you. And I think all of our work is about transforming narratives, right? Like not not bringing something to people because you're like, oh, this is what I think you need or want, but taking, like, having people, like you were saying, like control their own narrative, and present the version of ourselves that we want the world to see instead of having someone tell that story for us. So yeah, thank you both. I'm super excited to have a copy of the colored book. And Alexis, I'm so excited to see what you keep doing and keep kicking all the butts and being so powerful. We appreciate y'all.
Alexis, you inspire me. You are the reason that I do what I do. I work with high school students now. And so I know that you're not that far removed from that age group. So high school young ladies having someone like you to aspire to, not only as an artist, but as a young woman who has taken control of her narrative in terms of her life's work and is making a difference in society with that. That's major. So you're beautiful. And I appreciate your kind words. And Courtney, I appreciate your work, not only because it's raised so much money for the Community Bail Fund, but the co-op's work in general for years and years has served the purpose of uplifting and empowering women in a way that is inclusive and not directive. And so I appreciate that about the co-op. So thank you for sharing your latest project with us. I appreciate being on the panel with you both as well.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, I appreciate, and on behalf of ICJ, thanks y'all for moving through this process with us and for being on the panel. This has been a really great conversation. So a question for Courtney. So People's Paper Co-op collaborates with sort of folks who have been impacted by mass incarceration. And I know that you spoke a little bit on sort of the nature of that collaboration, right? So some folks like write poetry, some folks do like sort of the artwork. And I guess just could you speak a little bit more to just the collaborative process that you share, sort of both as the organization and then with sort of all the women who contribute to each piece that is created?
Yeah, so it looks differently because we're the spring cohort are our main project is that project for the Community Bail Fund. But past examples have been women in our program interviewed over 100 women in reentry and asked them, what do you need to thrive, not just survive when you came home? And as a result, they took all of those responses and created a Women's Bill of Rights for formerly incarcerated women. It's an ongoing piece of work. It's constantly being amended and ratified, if you will. But that writing and a subsequent article was printed in, it was printed for the city government in the, I can't remember anything right now. I just had a lot of coffee. It's all over. I'm sorry. But their work goes in many different places. So that's one version of a collaboration. The specific artwork that's displayed here, women are taking their poetry and their photographs and sharing it, and then, as I was saying, create a collaborative image. We've made videos. We've all of the artwork that we create gets turned into a million different things. So it's turned into banners that get paraded down Broad Street. It gets basically, the women in our program are looked to as experts. So sometimes people will say, "Hey, we would love for the co-op to make a holiday card." So last year for Community Legal Services, the women in our program were hired to create a holiday card for Community Legal Services. That's, we held a workshop specifically after the program had ended, because people, once they're part of the program, are always invited back and always part of the program. And we made that card together. I don't know, I kind of forgot what your question was, to be totally honest. So, sorry.
That's all right.
Rambling.
No, I mean, I think, sort of the answer that I was thinking of is that, like, I mean, obviously every collaboration is different, right? Like sort of the details of like how every collaboration works is different. And so then sort of, I think you maybe spoke to or expressed the role of the organization being to facilitate whatever kind of collaboration needs to arise, like to figure out what needs to happen between the people who are involved, and not to like, say this is how it has to be done each time.
Totally.
But yeah, I think that,
yeah,
and
we
I
never
think that's beautiful.
Thank you. And the we're trying just to never impose, right? So it's always each cohort is completely different. We ask people at the beginning what they're interested in learning about, and so then we try to bring in like powerful women from across the city who can teach classes on those specific topics, and then intermix between that we have it depends. It vacillates in a million ways, and I can't even begin to explain it succinctly. But it's an amazing process, and I'm like beyond honored to work with so many incredible humans all the time. So
cool, thank you. I just actually got a message from my director, Ms. Asada Thomas, who wants to personally thank each of you for being on this. Y'all have just been doing a fantastic job with the work that you've been doing and with sort of the conversation. So on behalf of Ms. Thomas, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, Asada.
Yep, she's laughing in the next room over there. All right. So yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I have prepared, or if we've sort of covered most of the things. Yeah, I mean, I guess Alexis, you've sort of spoken to having like the conversations, like the one-on-ones that you might have with friends and family, just about your work and about sort of the like how it connects to kind of like the broader conversations and movements that are happening. I don't know if you sort of can speak more to if like, what people's like responses have been in sort of when you're like talking about your art, sort of what are like some of the questions that people often have, or what is like, how did the conversation look?
Well, in my art, I use a lot of symbolism, and some of it can be quite literal and some is more abstract, but usually my goal is that people look at it and try to draw their own interpretation so that they come to me and speak about it. So like with these specific pieces, I've had conversations where people are like, "Oh, like, well, what do those? Why are there two different kinds of handcuffs or shackles on?" Like what does that mean? Or like, oh, what does the blue and red lighting, what does that represent? Or they'd be like, this is my interpretation of the piece. And then honestly, I don't have a set interpretation of my own art because there's just so much that can go into it. And so every time I have a conversation with somebody, maybe my own interpretation changes. But honestly, the conversation always deviates away from like the piece itself. If anything, the piece is the starting block where
Yeah.
people are just beginning to understand how they should start speaking about it, and then we go from talking about art and colored pencils to the implications of mass incarceration and how it's an evolution from slavery. Like that's how those conversations go,
Yeah.
and that it's usually very nice, just to be able to have that kind of impact on people because I decided to pick up a pencil. To you see a light come on and you see people begin to connect the dots and you see a passion start to grow because they want to learn more, they want to become a better ally or more well versed in the topic of race and social justice. Um, I hope that answers the question. I don't really
No,
know if
yeah,
it did.
that was really really interesting. Just, I think it sort of speaks to the point that you like said originally, which was kind of like looking at art can spark the conversations that we might not necessarily know how to start otherwise, right? Because
Mhm.
it's such like there's such like large topics and they're so kind of like fraught with, pain and historical trauma and like, but you can sort of enter into those conversations through art, I think, in a way that I can't fully articulate why or how that happens, why art can be so much more effective than just like coming at
Mhm.
something directly. But that's always just been my experience too. um, I guess sort of my last question would be actually, for any and all of you, like, can you maybe speak a little bit to how you envision the role of artists in engaging with like the wider community, like some sort of final words, like, how you see the role of artists in kind of community, society, however you want to think of that, and how that might look for you or your organization.
Mhm.
It's kind of been the topic of the whole conversation, so don't feel like you need to sort of come up with anything new, but just like to close out the time because we're almost at the end.
Yeah, that's a hard
Um,
question, and I feel like everyone has been answering it so
Yeah,
beautifully throughout
I
this
know.
conversation. Um, I just, again, on behalf of the co-op, I feel like being able to utilize art as a tool to spark conversations is one of the most important things that it can do to
Yeah.
um, remind people. People often use that term humanizing, which I think is a disgusting term because everyone is already a human and we're not trying to humanize
mhm.
any stories. But um, I feel like art can function as a way to just remind people that we're all it sounds so trite, but like that we're all experiencing similar things, and it functions as just yeah, a tool to an accessible way for people to understand stories. um yeah,
I
coffee
think if
and
we
I
look,
are not.
if we looked at the role of the artist in society, if we had to ascribe a role, I would say a translator. Like an
Mhm.
artist, like literally translates the pain, the pride, the joy, the anger experienced by our society. They translate it into a piece of art. And when you look at that art, there's all this history behind why the art was created. So I would say that an artist is kind of like a translator.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, just to quickly speak, because I'm conscious of time, I would say that artists are if we had to describe a role, I would say that we're change makers because there's so much you can do with art. You can use it as a way to encourage healing. You can use it to start conversation. As it's such a powerful form of protest to art, and you can use it to like create effective, tangible change in the way that Miss Courtney and Miss Connie are doing, where they're taking their art and they're turning it into money so we can support the bail funds and that kind of stuff. Like that's tangible, physical change. And I just think that any form of art is just so powerful and just creates everlasting change. And yeah, it's always interesting to see how it evolves and how powerful a pencil can be. But yes, we're change makers, making change in real time, which is really exciting.
Nice. Well, on those words, change makers, artist says change makers, making change in real time. Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone for being on this panel, and stay tuned for the afternoon session. It's going to be a great session. We have Dennis Fibo, who's the organizer of the Amend the 13th New Jersey movement, which is seeking to amend the 13th Amendment, which was sort of had the caveat for like prison labor, as it ended slavery, but had the caveat for prison labor. And so his work is seeking to amend that 13th Amendment to like remove that caveat. So, you know, we don't have prisons as kind of like the sort of modern day slavery. So I encourage everyone to attend the afternoon session starting at 1 o'clock. And yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in to the Art is Resistance on Wednesday, and thanks to the panelists for being part of a great conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for including us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye.